Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I'm your host, Hannah Zuberi, and welcome back to another episode of Justice for All Now. With all of the events taking place in Minneapolis in recent days, a group of dedicated Minneapolis Muslims have come together to help those in need and provide for those who continue to struggle. Joining me today is Hanan Wazwaz, one of Khidmah Initiative's founders, and Mohammed Yusuf. Khidmah is an emergency delivery service project started by various members of the Minnesota Muslim community to deliver food and essential supplies to those most vulnerable in our communities in times of need. At this time, we really want to talk about some positive contributions of the Muslim community in Minneapolis and around the country when it comes to times of unrest. The work they do is possible through a network of volunteers and partnerships with local organizations. Mohammed Yusuf is a brand strategist from Minneapolis, Minnesota. He represents Sudani American Collective, a youth-led organization that started in response to last year's Sudanese revolution, but continued after that to help the local Minnesota community and nonprofit work in Sudan. And Hanan, as I said earlier, is one of the founders of the Khidmah Initiative. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks for having us.
Alhamdulillah, this is beautiful to have you both here. I grew up in the Sudan, so that's my home. Alhamdulillah, miss it, would want to go back anytime. Have you been? Have you ever been there? Were you born here, Mohammed?
I was actually born in Sudan, but I never lived there a day. But I was actually there last year for my brother's wedding, but also for the Sudanese revolution. So I got to be a part of it over there.
SubhanAllah. So
Yeah.
maybe during this time, maybe we'll talk a little bit about what you saw there versus what you're seeing here. Revolutions are in both places. And the fact that the Muslim community can handle a Sudanese revolution, but we're having a really hard time handling an American revolution. And this is something, yeah. So, Bismillah, Hanan, let's talk about Khidmah. You are one of the founders.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me more about the history and when you guys founded it. Is it a nonprofit? How do you guys, tell me more what emergency relief services means.
Perfect. So Khidmah, first of all, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So on behalf of Khidmah, we thank you for sharing our story and what we do. So basically, Khidmah started as a result of the COVID situation back in March when we were asked to, stay home and socially distance, and where most of our businesses and organizations and community resources basically were shut down. So Khidmah came together with a group of friends that thought of just creative ways that we can go about delivering and getting resources to those that are most vulnerable in our community, immunocompromised, so that they don't have to put themselves at risk and leave their homes. Basically, Khidmah, in a nutshell, it's a delivery service in an emergency situation. And that's how we've been able to, alhamdulillah, help our community. We are not a nonprofit. There are talks of maybe us becoming one later on in the future, but not right now. What basically the magic happens behind Khidmah is we partner with a lot of nonprofits that already exist. Mm-hmm. As we know, Minnesota is home to so many diverse groups of organizations and people. And so we've been so fortunate, alhamdulillah, to take what the community has to offer, but then again, work with them in creative ways to be able to still offer the services that they do, but then around, socially distancing guidelines and acceptable ways that are necessary to get these resources out to people. And so we've been fortunate to work with, at least over 15 to 16 organizations so far in the community.
SubhanAllah. So that's a really great model, and I've seen that. I've seen some of that work with the Long Island helpers, and maybe you guys can coordinate and best practices what they're learning over there. You know, so one of the founders, Fawzia Sayed, is actually she used to work for Justice for All. So we'll help you get connected there. Because just sometimes you need that quick thinking, the creative, and not the bureaucracy that a lot of times nonprofits tend to have, especially older nonprofits, because then they have to make decisions through boards and all of that, versus when it's a coalition of people who've come together, like you're saying, and come together during emergencies, then it gives you that flexibility to be able to go out and actually get work done. So tell us so this is COVID, we're still in COVID, and there are protests taking place, and it's just like layers upon layers. So unfortunately, it's just strange times to be alive. So tell us more about what were some of the first responses that you guys were able to do, Mohammed, that you were able to get done in Minneapolis?
Yeah. So we did a lot of work. I mean, now that you're talking about with coronavirus and now with the protests and everything, it's really created this situation where people were just cooped up in their houses for 3 months. But now all of a sudden, the sort of the sanctions on going outside have been lifted, right? So now it's gotten to this space where everybody's just outside to protest and to actually be a part of this change. So it's created a lot of change in the city. And one of the things that happened that you guys obviously have heard about is that there has been a lot of destruction around the city, right? And regardless of who was the one that's committing it, that we still need to bring our city back to normal, right? We still need to bring our city back to where it was before all of this happened and keep it clean, right? So one of the projects that us as the Sudani American Collective did was that we organized a big cleanup in one of the most heavily hit areas in the city, right? So that's around the Minneapolis 3rd Precinct, police precinct, and that Minnehaha shopping center, which is sort of like the start of where all of this happened around that area, right? So there was a lot of destruction there, as I said, and for the days after the protest in the mornings, people would go out there and they would clean, right? And they would clean the entire area. They'd come with their brooms, garbage bags, kids, adults, every single race, color, and ethnicity, right? But one of the things that happened is that after all the cleaning happened, there wasn't really a system for getting it out. So us, the Sudani American Collective, we noticed this issue, and we decided to take it upon us to figure out a way to solve it, right? And what we did was that we worked with a local garbage waste management company called Curbside Waste. And what we did was that we organized 3 garbage trucks to come to that area and to pretty much like organize a whole cleanup where people would take the garbage, put it in the garbage trucks, and then by doing that, we actually created a system that got the garbage that was already collected out of the city, right? And when we got there, this place was really dirty, and there's been a lot of coverage, and what it was, there was a lot of garbage bags everywhere, there was a lot of dirt on the ground, and then when we left, it was amazingly clean. Thousands of people came. There was even at one point, like regardless of the politics behind them, but there was even at one point a group of National Guards that came with their brooms, right? And they came and they started helping us clean. They were literally right there with their brooms, just picking up everything. And it was really amazing, the show of solidarity with everybody there together.
So tell me a little bit, both of you, about that area. So those of us who don't live in Minneapolis, where did this occur? Like, is this downtown? Is it a sort of a little bit off downtown? Where is this police station that was burnt down? Where is the shop where this incident took place?
Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah. So the incident itself, where George Floyd was murdered, was 7 minutes away from downtown Minneapolis, right? So it's right there on the edge of downtown Minneapolis. The area where the police precinct and most of the destruction happened was about maybe 10 blocks away from that. So it's about 5 minutes away from downtown Minneapolis. So you're talking about all of this is happening within that metropolitan area and all within walking distance of each other.
Oh, subhanAllah. And this is a predominantly Black neighborhood. Are there any immigrants there at all?
Oh yeah, there's Somalis, there's Hispanics, and a few other races that live in that area, and it's pretty diverse too.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So and as you guys were, when you guys heard the news, and you're also part of Khidmah as well, Mohammed, right? From what I understand.
I'm involved, yes. I have a lot of friends that are in it, but not as much as Hanan or any of my other friends.
Okay. So when you guys heard what was going on, what was the first thing that, or how did you guys get activated? Take us a little bit behind the scenes of the work that was done. I know you guys have partnerships with a lot of nonprofits. So Al-Ma'moon or Ma'oon?
Al-Ma'oon.
Al-Ma'oon. So
Yep.
Is that a nonprofit in Minneapolis that is already doing a lot of work? And so, yeah,
Yes.
behind the scenes.
So what happened is that we waited for kind of the toughest days that were followed by just a lot of unrest in the city, because we did have very strict curfews for a few days, and so a lot of us couldn't really move or mobilize much. But as even during that time, a lot of us were kind of just organizing virtually just to kind of plan things and see where it takes us. We partnered, or the community basically, we have a mashallah, a solid community that really knows how to work together, alhamdulillah. So the community came together, and I think they decided that one of the mosques in Minneapolis that serves a large portion of the African American Muslim population, Masjid An-Nur, they basically have an organization called Al-Ma'oon. It's also a nonprofit, and they do a lot of services for their community through that organization. And so the community decided that Al-Ma'oon to take that leadership to basically take the initiative on this specific matter, and all of us are just going to be behind it and support them, and that's exactly what we've been doing. So we've partnered up with them as the people, or as the service, to basically deliver all of what the community is bringing in, as far as food, as far as not essential items, hygiene items, toilet paper, baby wipes, formula, things like that the community could use, especially at this time. Because what ended up happening is that after the community realized that, first of all, we have a tight curfew, so a lot of places were shutting down, and then also a lot of places got damaged. Places that, like pharmacies, like grocery stores, like stores that people would grab their regular supplies and items and groceries from, were also closed down or either damaged. And so they didn't have local places to shop, so that's where Al-Ma'oon stepped in and started collecting donations from the community, monetary. They have a Launch Good campaign that surpassed, mashallah, over 250,000 as of now. And so people from all over the country have been helping. So those that can't physically bring things and donate, they have been helping monetarily. And so again, where Khidmah came in is that we are the partners in delivery. Basically, they have the stuff, they package it, and we are the ones that deliver it.
Okay, mashallah. So tell us some stories from the ground. Who are the people that you're meeting when you're going on these deliveries? What sort of problems are you encountering? What are they facing? Because a lot of times when you look at mainstream media, the only stories that you see are of and we don't get to hear what is really happening inside the communities. And having seen it firsthand in Baltimore, in DC, where it's the seniors who can't get their medication, and who are the babies who can't get their diapers. Those are so. Please share some stories from actual people that you guys met through your deliveries.
for me personally, just coming out of a COVID, I mean, we're still during, in a COVID pandemic. So being in that time, it's already tough on people that are, elderly, people that have, kids that can't get out of the house yet, people that, understand that the community right now that we're focused on in Minneapolis, those are folks that, rely on bus transportation, and bus transportation had to be stopped for a few days. And I think it's set to resume to sometime today. I'm not quite 100%, but it has been stopped for a few days. So those people that rely on such transportation can't, go out and do their thing. And another point is that all the stores that are local to them has forced to be shut down or closed temporarily. So getting them the needed supply is, it was a must on our community to help in that way. As far as like personal stories, I haven't yet heard or been able to interact with people yet, just because the way our delivery works is that it's very discreet. We have an app. That app is, has the addresses that all the addresses that we need to go and deliver packages to. We leave them at the doorstep, and then they get notified that their packages is there. I think it's a very smart move on the coordination of this effort, just so that we don't have to come across face to face with the families, because it is such a sensitive time, and it's so hard sometimes to be involved in these efforts, because it puts people on the other side in a very vulnerable spot. And so I think it's discreet on purpose and by design in a smart way, so that way we are sensitive to their needs and also their emotions at this time. As far as what people are feeling in the community, in the Muslim community, we're ready to step up and do our part, because part of our community is hurting, and when one part of it is hurting, all of us are hurting. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing the best of our ability in whatever capacity that we can.
So I'm fascinated by this. There's an app. So tell me more about this app.
Yep. So I just put out our training video on our Facebook page this morning. So basically, it trains volunteers what to do, and it trains them how to download the app. It's called Route for Me. It's a public app, and it's a big app too. So people download that. So Masjid al-Nur and Al-Ma'un, they're together. So they basically input all the addresses that they need of families in need of these supplies and these food boxes. And basically they put them, or they cluster them based on zip code or based on like location. Then they put them in this app. And then once a volunteer from Khidmah comes, they're ready to go and deliver. They already have assigned their route. So for example, yesterday I went with a bunch of volunteers. I downloaded the app, registered. They gave me my route of like 6 to 7 addresses to deliver to. And then I went out, delivered those. And basically you go in one by one, and you have to. So basically what's nice about this app is that it allows you to timestamp that, oh, you've arrived. Oh, now you've departed that location. So that on the other side, Al-Ma'un can track all of that and kind of can estimate, how much can we handle on a daily basis. And then as this thing grows, how much can we do realistically? So it's very cool that we're utilizing technology to, make something like this be as effective and productive as possible.
That's amazing. I love this. And I'm going to share this idea with local nonprofits here. We do a lot of work in DC and Baltimore. So this is, and I love the idea of the privacy as well, because that is one of the biggest hurdles that we face. Is a lot of times people want to do stuff, but you want to protect the people that are trusting you with their financial situation, letting you know that they're in need, and to have their dignity maintained. And the right hand doesn't know what the left hand gave, sort of situation. And the donors too, they don't, it keeps. One thing that I do miss out from that does miss out what happened with this technology and already the social distancing is that then communities don't come together. So that is one thing that perhaps we've sort of sanitized it in the sense, and it becomes, how do you stop it from becoming like this very missionary sort of approach where I'm going to go into this community, I'm going to help them out, and then, but I don't have any ties to the community.
I think with us, I would say that Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota in general, because of the diversity in our community, we've all been kind of integrated into each other's organizations. For example, like our mosques, yes, we have sometimes, like Somali heavy mosque where, it's just around the Somali community, but we're able to go to each other's places, and especially more so in our organizations. So nonprofits, you'll see, Pakistani Indian communities, Arabs, East Africans, West Africans. So people from all over, they're kind of merged into communities. And through these networks and friendships and interactions, we're able to kind of go in and help one another. So for example, I'm Arab, I'm Palestinian, but at the same time, I feel comfortable and just as obligated to go into an African American community, a Somali community, to help and organize where needed. And I think that's where, Islam and the level of commitment that you have towards our faith really shines, when you're able to just disregard, whatever cultural or, ethnic divide that we have, and just go in and jump in wherever needed. In Khidmah, it's funny because, I'm Arab. There's a few Somalis that are co-founders, Oromos, Pakistani. So we're very, aware of the cultural and ethnic differences that we have. But at the same time, we came together towards one cause. And I think that's what's really beautiful. And another thing, like I mentioned earlier, our community also is, when it comes to that diversity in leadership, we also have it and respect it. So I think that has been a tremendous positive thing about the community, and being able to mobilize and help each other as fast as we're able to.
Mohammed, what is your experience?
I mean, I don't think I can follow that up with anything better, to be honest. Like she completely hit every single point, and I think that's the beautiful part about Minneapolis is we all realize that Islam is higher than anything else, right? It's higher than our skin color, it's higher than our culture, it's higher than where we were born or where we live in the city, right? So there is this really like beautiful community of like just everybody helping each other, and I think you see it a lot of shuyukh when they come here for some of their lectures. They say the same exact thing. They're like, we might have a lot more Muslims in our city, for example, in Texas or wherever, right? But the community of Minneapolis and Minnesota in general is just so intertwined. Like it's just all about helping each other, and you see it when you come to these lectures over here. Like all types of races sitting next to each other, and just all friends, right? And I think that's really like going back to us trying to be to live the sunnah as best as possible, right? Like the Prophet's sunnah of just being together in a community that Islam is higher than race and higher than color and higher than everything.
So both of you are sharing your personal experiences with an integrated community and a multicultural, multi-ethnic community, multiracial community in Minneapolis. Keeping your personal good experiences aside, there, and a lot of us who don't live there or who might be reading news articles are hearing things that perhaps paint a little bit of a different picture. And maybe that may be because a lot of those communities are not connected with masajid, not connected with this, really practical faith living that both of you are expressing. So let's look at a little bit off that. Like there's a lot of friction right now, and so this is something that I wanted to discuss with you guys. There's friction between immigrant store owners in Black neighborhoods, and some of them have integrated really well and are part of the community and are supported by the community and support the community. What are some good practices that you have seen, and what are some things that you definitely think need improvement on?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'll start there. I think you're right. There are always a lot of bad examples of things that don't go well, right? But I think with all of that being said, is that with every single bad example that goes out in the world, there's 1,000 examples that aren't talked about, right? It's like, the people who work on preventative measures aren't celebrated, right? It's the people who come and fix a problem, they're the ones that are celebrated, right? So there's a lot of that, I think, that's happening, where it's like, there's hundreds and thousands of really good examples, but the bad examples are the ones that we focus on, right? And the ones that are worth talking about. So I think, like, there are some cases of tension, but I think that just goes back to human nature. Like, at the end of the day, us as humans, sometimes we make the mistake of looking out for our own good, right? So that means not supporting this local grocery store just because they're from a different race or something like that, right? But I think, like, we're seeing more and more examples, especially now, of everybody coming together, right? Like, there was this furniture shop that burnt down during these protests, owned by an Oromo family, and they started a GoFundMe page, and literally there thousands of dollars are being donated by people from every single race and religion and everything, right? So it's like, unfortunately, we need the beauty of humans and of the communities comes out in cases like this, right? Where a bad event and an unfortunate event showed the beauty of the communities, right? So it's like, because of what's happened to George Floyd, all of a sudden we're seeing solidarity on another level, right? Where people are just supporting each other. There are, like, there's cases of people that are going to donate food to, like, local schools and everything, and the line is literally blocks long, right? It's just blocks long of cars just waiting to donate food or to help each other, right? And I guess a beautiful example of sort of like the community coming together and people from different races, is the truck driver that tried to drive through the protest in Minneapolis, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about it, where there was thousands of protesters on the highway, and this truck driver went through it and almost, like, killed people, right? But when they took him out, there was a lot of people that were angry, right? And rightfully so, because some of their friends got hurt. But there was even more people who were protecting the truck driver, right? Like, there's, I know me and my brother and my cousin were there protecting him, right? There was other people that are right there next to us, Asians and Black people and white people and everything, and we were protecting him, right? Because at the end of the day, like, we didn't want to show off those same bad traits that, for example, the officers showed, right? Where it's like, we're not the executioners and the judges of this person, right? So there was a lot of cases of just people there protecting him, and really just, and it really showed you the beauty of the community and the beauty of Minneapolis, and really the like the fitra and the beauty of humans, really.
Hanan.
He said it all, to be honest. I mean, it's through these tough times that we really show kind of our true colors and what we're all about. And I think, our community has been tested a lot in the past. This has definitely been a huge test for all of us. And, we're doing everything that we can to do, to be an example for others, and to help the community that is really in need of it during this time. Also, I do want to say that, unfortunately, there's going to be racism in every race and every ethnicity. But the most important thing that I take away personally from all of this is to make sure that, as an ally of, our brothers and sisters in the Black community, is to stand out and to, literally call out anything that is offensive, that is racist, to make that stand now, and to make that intention to say, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We're not going to handle anybody in our circles, in our friendships, in our families, even to go out and continue this hatred and this racism, because they are part of the system that is making these environments very intolerable and unfavorable for them. And so, in the whole conversation with, racial justice and being an ally to those that need it the most in times of need, we all have a part and a role to play. So I think that conversation is slowly starting to come up in our community, especially because we have the white Muslims of various different ethnicities, and also we have the Black Muslims and various different ethnicities. So how we communicate and work out these differences is going to be very interesting in the coming days and weeks, and inshallah months. We do still have a lot of work to do, even though we're showing solidarity, we're working together, there's a lot of diversity involved in the efforts that we're doing, but there's still a lot of work to be done on how we go about and treat one another and talk about one another. And I think part of the bigger picture is to always put Islam first and to apply what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us, how to act and be with one another, and to always put that whole basis of you're white, you're black aside, and to basically come together and learn from one another, because we all know that verse, in akramakum indallahi atqakum, that the best among you are of people that have the most taqwa. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all among those people, and this is something that we should be striving for.
Sure. Thank you for that reminder. I did want to ask you, I know though this is personal for you as well, because you're connected, your family is deeply connected to what has happened with the murder of George Floyd. Can you please share with us what has transpired between, and there's a lot of misunderstandings and really a path forward. What would you have wanted to be changed? What policies, structural policies, would you like to see implemented that would perhaps, for an incident like this to not occur again on our watch?
Exactly. So, I mean, what transpired was really unfortunate. So for those that don't know, I'm the cousin of the owner of Cup Foods in Minneapolis, that where the 911 call was initiated from. I know outside of Minnesota, people that don't know our community and people that don't know the owner of the store, specifically because he's very well known and he's very active in the community. People on the outside are judging based on what the media is telling them, and that is it's a fake $20 bill. Was it worth it? It cost somebody their life. The thing is, and the facts are, is that the owner himself was not present in the store. These calls have to be made, and there's policies in place and protocols that each state dictates what happens when anybody presents to you in your store, what you do with a counterfeit bill. And that's just to track basically where that money comes from, just to make sure that it's not coming in large amounts and whatnot. And there's entire policies about it. And basically the gist of the story is that Mahmoud and his store have called over 250 calls to the police in the past. I think in the past either year or just in 2019, of any counterfeit bills that come through, whatever the amount is, they just have to call the police. The police comes, they question the person. Do we anticipate that the police will execute somebody like that? Absolutely not. And in fact, when one of the customer or one of the employees called back Mahmoud and told them, listen, hey, they're murdering, they're killing that person, what should we do? He was confused. And if you look at the reports and his testimony, he's like, call the cops on the cops. I mean, you would never assume that cops will do that. And in fact, also what media missed to point out is that one of his nephews tried to get in the way to stop the police officer, but he was stopped by the other officer that was standing. So in all, this is unfortunate. It's being painted that, it's an Arab that is calling police on a Black person. It was just a big mess at how it was initially reported. And until then, Mahmoud started talking with other people and the media to say, hey, you know, I've been in the community for 31 years. I mean, that is his community. People know him by
Do you
name.
think that there needs to be structural change in that? And that's our responsibility to get that. Why are heavily armed, military geared police being called in for counterfeit notes? Should there be a statewide policy change that in cases like this, that somebody else from some other department comes in who is not heavily armed, who is not, because if this is happening, especially in communities like smaller communities where it is a lot of times, me and you could be carrying a counterfeit note. Anybody could be carrying one. And what we have seen with the use of force policies with the police, it's just, and the fact that a lot of times they get away. There has been no police been actually charged. Okay, they might be charged, court case might happen, but a lot of times they get qualified immunity. So that is just the reality of things in the world right now. So at that point, does it become the and you guys could probably share, perhaps you could share more. I know in the East Coast, there's a lot of work being done in trying to get those policies changed, or have, until those policies are changed, we people of color ourselves protect each other, because we don't want this to happen again. We don't.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think, I was just talking to another friend the other day. I was like, it would be amazing to make a policy or change into how, what happens when, we have to call the police on counterfeit bills. That policy should also be reviewed, because nobody, again, intended to call make a 911 call with the police showing up and executing somebody. That's just so bizarre. But then I think that following this case, I think that should be reviewed on the steps that business owners need to take whenever they have to come across the situation.
Yeah. So I did. I was talking to a black store owner in Atlanta, Georgia. So what they do, they're like, we never call the cops. We get this all the time, $20, $10, $100, whatever. We just put it to the side because we know what's going to happen. But that's because that's their lived reality. Because they get stopped by in the car. You have a nice car, you get stopped. You're in a nice neighborhood, you get stopped. And I would like to get your perspective too, Mohammed. As a black man, as a man, when you're walking, talking, getting on a plane, all sorts of, you're probably you have to go through two steps. You're Muslim, so you go through anti-Muslim bigotry, and then you have anti-black and face anti-black racism as well. So, what are some suggestions that you would suggest to our communities on how to be good allies, and because I'm seeing hesitancy on the part of some of our masajid in calling this what it is, a police murdering, a police violence. It's very like, oh, let's be good with the police and let's be good with our communities. But so what would you like to see, and how do we be good allies?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up flying as a Muslim, because there's sometimes silver linings to things, right? When you get randomly selected, that means you don't have to wait in a line. You just go all the way to the front. You get extra search, but you go all the way to the front. So I think there is, I think that people just need to realize, like, stop always thinking about things like selfishly, right? If it's not happening to you, a lot of people think that if it's not happening to you or your type of people, then first of all, it doesn't exist. But second of all, I don't need to say anything about it, right? But that's not true, because if it's happening to somebody else today, it might happen to you tomorrow, right? So I think this is where sort of Martin Luther King's famous quote goes, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, right? So just because it's not you today, it might be you tomorrow, right? So I think people just need to realize, like, this isn't the way that human life should go, right? Like, imagine living in a world where you don't feel comfortable calling the police, right? You don't have to imagine living in that world, because we do live in that world right now, right? And a lot of people experience it more than others, right? Black people experience it more than others. Immigrants experience it more than the next group, right? So I think just even realizing that that problem exists should be enough to make people act, right? We should live in a world where we can trust the police, right? The police are supposed to be there for the best interest of the people, right? At the end of the day, it's our tax dollars that go to paying their salaries, right? So I think it's very important for the police to be there, but not to be there in the way that they are today, right? We definitely need police reform. We need people that we can trust. We need people that understand the systemic racism that happens and why people are in the situations that they are, right? Like, you see lawyers having to go through years and thousands of dollars, like, to become lawyers, right? But then police officers just have to go to like a short academy, right? And a lot of these people, they're like they're in a system that, or they're in a system that brings out these bad officers, and then that ends up affecting the community. So I think it's really just about us, like, realizing those issues and realizing that this is, if it's happening to somebody else, that means it's happening to me, right? And let's just work together to sort of like get rid of all these issues in the world.
So
Absolutely.
let's get back to service. When, in the long run, right, after all these cameras leave, after all of this is done, and so what do you anticipate will be the needs of your community, and where are you looking for to fill those needs? Like, what is the game plan going forward? And what if the protests continue? And what if they, taper off? And if they do taper off, like, sort of, I want to hear like concrete solutions that you guys might have, that so this issue doesn't just die out with the next big thing that comes along and we're not talking about this anymore.
I think for us, we're starting as a group to have that conversation with each other about, where do we take Khidmah next? What's going to happen to it? At this time, we're still in the mode of, trying to catch up from all the current events that has happened. And I feel like, things are moving along so fast that we haven't been able to, discuss in details, all the things that we would like to do later on, or what might Khidmah look like in a non-COVID, protest situation that we're seeing. But at this point, we know that we want to continue. We know that we want to continue to provide for the community, whether it's through the delivery services that we've started or not. But, we knew that this kind of is where we belong, to just kind of keep serving and helping the community. But as far as like concrete, solutions and ideas, we haven't gone that far yet.
What about you, Mohammed?
Yeah, I think a lot of times these situations, as we talked about, present themselves, and then they end up revealing the disparities, right? So now that we have sort of figured out where these disparities are, they're not going to disappear after COVID is finished. They're not going to disappear after these protests die down. They're going to still be there, right? So I think now that we figured out where those disparities are, it's just about always keeping them in focus, right? Always keeping them in focus. Like, we see a lot of issues within the urban areas, right, but not in the suburbs, right? So, and we've always known that was a problem, but now we're finally acting on it. So I think just keeping them always in mind, knowing that just because we don't see them anymore once these issues die down, it doesn't mean they disappeared, and always keeping them in focus and figuring out how to create solutions for them.
So is there a network of, so or masajid in the urban, how are they connected to the mosques in the suburbs?
So from what I know is that I think in the past, I would say year or so, a collective of nonprofit organizations and also masajid came together to kind of form a leadership group. I think it's a nonprofit now officially. I don't know the name of it, but it's basically, if you're a head of a masjid, if you're a head of an organization, you take that leader from, this space and that leader from the other, and you put it together in an organization that basically has all the community heads so that they can talk about, community issues. They can talk about the things that they're working on, the things that they're supporting, the services that are existing in the community. And I think in Minnesota, that effort has, we've seen so many good things happen as a result of communities coming together to work with one another. It's showing more unity, but there's still, there's a lot more work to be done. But I think that's the steps that Minnesota has taken as far as leadership and organizing goes.
Mohammed, I did want to ask you, you were there during the Sudanese revolution. Um, what are the similarities that you saw there um, versus what you're seeing on the ground here? And what are the differences?
Yeah. Well, the number one difference that we sort of like is very apparent. The Sudanese revolution was peaceful from start to finish, right? No protester even lifted up a single stick to hurt another person. Like it was peaceful from start to finish, right? And then here we see that it started off peaceful, but whichever agents decided to turn it into this, it's happened right now. That's irregardless of the fact that whether it's right or wrong, right? Because in America we tried the peaceful route, it didn't work. Colin Kaepernick kneeled, they had a problem with that. Derek kneeled, now we have a problem with that, right? So we tried the peaceful route. So I think that's like the main difference between them. But then similarities, it's like there's beauty that came out of everything, right? Like in the Sudanese revolution, there was lots of beauty and art that came out of it. Right, famously, there was this video that came out where people were walking around with a garbage bag and they were chanting. The garbage bag had money, right? And they were chanting, "If you don't have money, take. If you have money, put." Right? Or in another case, there was a person had his car parked. The window happened to be shattered for some reason. Just people of the community started putting money in there, right, for him to fix it. The guy wasn't even anywhere in the premises, right? And then there's beauty here that we've seen that we see also that me and Hanan have been talking about for the last 45 minutes, right? So there's a lot of beauty that's coming out. There's also similarities in the way social media is reacting, right? When the Sudanese revolution happened, everybody turned their profile pictures blue. Everybody was spreading information. Everybody knew what was happening in Sudan, right? Similarly here, everybody turned their profile pictures black. Everybody's spreading information, and people are finally waking up and understanding what issues need to be solved. And I think like the biggest similarity with both of them, and with really almost every single problem in the world, and especially like government problem to the people, is that there's an injustice that revealed itself, right? And I think the fact that the injustice revealed itself, now people are waking up. So I think that's like the biggest similarity: injustices and people waking up, and people demanding a change. And I think it's beautiful whenever people are demanding a change by whichever method they choose. But that change results in the lives of thousands of people, if not millions and generations of people, getting better. And I think that's the most important thing. People are demanding a better life. It just looks different from place to place, from country to country. And yeah, I think that's the biggest similarity between them.
That's beautiful. Jazakallah khair for sharing that. So as we're going to be winding down pretty soon, and I wanted to share some of our actions that we've put together. We're a human rights organization. So this show is action oriented. we like to talk about justice issues, and service is definitely part of servant leadership. Is a part of justice until you solve those structural problems like poverty, like in the long term and in the short term. A person who is frustrated, who hasn't eaten, is going to be frustrated. There's just layers of that. But in to do that, a lot of people understand relief work. They understand when you all say, okay, we're gonna get cans together and diapers together, and we're going to deliver them, and this is something that makes people feel good. It fills a short-term need, but there are lots of long-term. So I feel like if that is something where the relief organizations can work hand in glove with advocacy and human rights organizations, in saying, we're here for the short term, we're a band-aid solution, but you all need to go out and now fix those, structural issues. And to that, we need thus the same kind of, feelings, the same kind of like fervor that people get, when you've seen it when people are out there doing relief work. It brings peace to the heart. It feels like you're doing something, right? Whereas, making a phone call to some congressperson is like, it's just like, what did I just do to like, how is that pleasing to my Lord? And how is this like a religious obligation? All of that. So this is where I would like to talk to your generation, right? Like, we've done this, protesting for years, been in the service of people for years. And this is something that I feel like is missing from our bag of tools. And so really would like your generation to take that up if people are calling for that, just like you're uplifting the call for relief work, to also uplift the call for advocacy work. I do ask my audience to go visit your website, khidmah.org. Help Minneapolis, check out all the different ways that they're helping. If you're looking to donate and get some work that, you're really moved by this movement, and you've seen, this is a way that you can help out and actually get, funds and where it's really needed. And also I wanted to highlight Mohammed's, the Sudani youth organization. What's it called?
Sudani American Collective.
The Sudani American Collective, mashallah. So, highlight their work. Please go out and support. All our liberation is tied together. And on my end, I would like to just thank you all for being here. Thank my guests for being here. And just highlight 2 actions that we have on the Justice for All website. That we really like. What we need, we have a statement for Imams for Black Lives, which is for imams or Muslim leadership from around the United States on the murder of George Floyd. This is a national statement representing imams and American Muslim leaders from around the country. And there are 8 asks. They're endorsing so Justice for All and whoever signing this is endorsing the following 8 can't wait reforms for each police department to adopt without delay regarding when and how they use force. So one of that is banning chokeholds and strangleholds, requiring de-escalation, requiring warning before shooting, exhaust all other means before shooting, duty to intervene and stop extensive force by other officers. So if you see an officer exerting excessive force, then other police officers, it should be their duty to step in and not protect their officer, but step in and protect the citizen. Ban shooting at moving vehicles, require use of force continuum. And these are practiced, researched techniques that have worked around the world, require comprehensive reporting each time an officer uses force or threatens to use force. So this is the statement that, and then it, obviously goes into brotherhood and sisterhood in Islam. So this is the statement that it's on Justice for All / Imams for Black Lives. And we urge people to get imams and their leadership to sign this. My team will have this listed in comments, as well as you will probably see it on the ticker soon. And so this is one action that we're asking people to take, is ask their imams and leadership to sign this statement. The other action, this is an action that everybody who is a part of, who is a U.S. citizen, and I believe you don't even have to be a U.S. citizen, even if you live as permanent resident in the United States, is to call on Congress. So this is so we have an email set up, and we'll have a calling tool set up pretty soon on this, where you call on your elected officials and ask for these 8 can't wait policies to be implemented, and require a federal standard for that use of force be reserved for only when necessary, as a last resort, without exhausting after exhausting reasonable options. There's 3 or 4 other points that this goes into, and I just would like everybody to go to the Justice for All website and make sure that you're acting on this. We need to make our voices heard. We need to ask for policy changes, because from a federal level. So thank you so much for joining us today. Assalamu alaikum.